If nihilism is true, if there is no inherent meaning, no ultimate purpose, no fixed direction, then what shall you do? This question doesn't come from confusion, it comes from honesty. Because at some point, if you look deeply enough, you begin to see it. The goals you chase are borrowed, the meanings you hold are inherited. The paths you follow were already laid out. And suddenly, everything starts to feel constructed. Not false, but not absolute either. So the question arises, if none of this is inherently meaningful, then why am I doing anything at all? And for most people, this is where discomfort begins. Because meaning has always been your anchor. It told you, this matters, this is worth it, this is who you should become. And without that, you feel like you're floating, uncertain, ungrounded, directionless. So the immediate reaction is to escape, to find a new meaning quickly, a new goal, a new identity, a new belief, something to hold on to. But pause. What if that reaction is the very thing preventing you from seeing clearly? What if the discomfort is not a problem, but a doorway? Nihilism doesn't say nothing matters. That's a shallow interpretation. What it actually reveals is nothing has fixed meaning. And that is very different. Because if meaning is not fixed, then it is not imposed. And if it is not imposed, then you are not bound. But this freedom doesn't feel like freedom at first. It feels like emptiness. Because you are used to being guided, told what to want, told what to pursue, told what success looks like. And now, that structure is gone. So you ask, what should I do now? And the sacred human answers, nothing immediately. Not out of laziness, not out of indifference, but out of clarity. Because the moment you rush to fill the emptiness, you are back in the same loop, replacing one borrowed meaning with another. So the sacred human doesn't rush. He stays with the emptiness. Not dramatically, not philosophically, just simply. He allows the question to exist without immediately answering it. And this is rare, because most people cannot sit without direction. They feel the urge to move, to define, to conclude. But the sacred human waits, and in that waiting, something begins to change. The emptiness starts to lose its weight. It no longer feels like a void. It starts to feel like space. Open, unstructured, unassigned. And in that space, you begin to notice something subtle. You are still here. Even without meaning, you are still seeing, still experiencing, still living. Life didn't stop. Only the story about it changed. And this is the shift. You realize you don't need meaning to experience life. Meaning is something you add, not something life requires. So the question changes from, what is the meaning of my life? To, what is happening right now? And this question is different. It doesn't demand a future. It doesn't demand a purpose. It brings you back to direct experience. Breath, movement, sound, thought, emotion. Simple, immediate. And in that simplicity, life becomes lighter. Not because it is easier, but because you are no longer carrying the pressure of making everything meaningful. Now, this does not mean you stop acting. The sacred human does not become passive. He still works, still creates, still engages. But his actions are no longer driven by the need to justify existence. He doesn't act to prove something. He doesn't act to become something. He acts because action is happening, because something in the moment moves him. And this movement is not forced. It is not calculated. It is natural. For example, you eat, not because it gives life meaning, but because the body is hungry. You speak, not because it fulfills a purpose, but because something needs to be expressed. You create, not because it defines your identity, but because something in you wants to move outward. This is a very different way of living. It is not driven by goals. It is not structured by meaning. It is responsive, moment to moment. And this doesn't make life empty. It makes it direct. You are no longer living through an idea of life. You are living life itself. Now, does this mean you never choose a direction? No. The sacred human can still choose, but his choices are not based on fear of meaninglessness. They are based on clarity in the moment. If something feels right, he moves. If something feels forced, he stops. Simple. No heavy philosophy, no existential pressure, just attention. And here's the deeper truth. When you are no longer chasing meaning, something unexpected happens. Your actions become more honest because they are not shaped by what they are supposed to represent. They are simply what they are. And in that honesty, there is a quiet sense of ease, not excitement, not fulfillment in the dramatic sense, just ease. Because you are no longer trying to turn life into something. You are letting it unfold. So if nihilism is true, what shall you do? You don't collapse, you don't escape, you don't rush to replace meaning. You stay, you observe, you experience, you act when action arises, and slowly you realize something profound. Life does not need meaning to be lived. Meaning is something you can play with, not something you depend on. And this is where freedom begins. Not the freedom to do anything wildly, but the freedom from needing everything to make sense. The sacred human lives here, not in answers, not in conclusions, but in direct contact with what is. He doesn't deny nihilism, he doesn't glorify it either. He simply sees it and continues living. Without fear, without urgency, without illusion. And in that, there is something deeper than meaning. Not something you can define, not something you can explain, but something you can only experience. A quiet aliveness, unforced, unlabeled, unassigned. So again, if nothing has inherent meaning, what shall you do? You live, not because it means something, but because it is happening. And for the sacred human, that is enough.